Hi everyone, welcome back to my series on director Quentin Tarantino. Just a couple of films left, and today's episode is of course on Grindhouse, which is a double feature massive tribute to exploitation cinema that was released in early 2007. Unfortunately, it didn't do all that well at the box office. Not as high as expectations, so it was the two films that comprise Grindhouse. One by Rodriguez called Planet Terror, one by Tarantino called Death Proof, were split for their overseas releases and were put on video that way, and so people tend to think of them as two separate movies rather than as one. I like to think of Grindhouse as one big experience, partly because the structure of Death Proof mimics the structure of Grindhouse as a whole. And they share an aesthetic with the flaws in the film, the missing reels, the imperfections and scratches in the film, what have you. They share some cast members. Tarantino appears in supporting roles in both. Rose McGowan is in both. You've got characters, actually, who appear in both movies. Both movies are set in Austin, Texas. The first one actually takes place after the second one. But you've got a sheriff played by Michael Parks and a doctor played by Marley Shelton, who are playing the same characters in both films. So there's definitely a connection between the two. Plus, of course, you have the funny little cue cards between the movies telling you to go to the concession stand. You've got the trailers that for at the time were fake movies, but now actually Machete by Rodriguez is actually a real movie now. Unfortunately, I didn't like that one very much. But of course, you've got the Eli Roth trailer for Thanksgiving, the Rob Zombie trailer, and then, what was it, Werewolf Nazis of the SS or something like that? Werewolf Women of the SS? Can't remember. And then there's the Edgar Wright trailer for a movie called Don't, which is actually my favorite part of Grindhouse. Of both movies and everything, my favorite part of the whole Grindhouse was that phony trailer for the Edgar Wright film. And the link to that is below. There's a download of it, and I've linked it below if you want to take a look at it if you haven't seen it already, because chances are, if you didn't see Grindhouse in the theater, you probably don't own that Grindhouse set, the Blu-ray set, which has all of that on there. You probably just have one movie or the other, or you've seen one or the other, so you're missing that one. So please check it out. It's really, really funny. So, with the double feature, obviously Austin, Texas is the shared location, and in Death Proof, basically, you've got two sets of women who are being terrorized by a guy named Stuntman Mike, played by Kurt Russell, who is terrific in this movie. But he is not really the focus of the movie. He is like, you know, the calamity that they have to overcome. The focus of the movie is actually on these two groups of friends and how they interact with each other. They spend a lot of time talking about, you know, their lives, about the men in their life, about their jobs, about music that they like, etc. You know, in the second half it's cars. There's a real focus on cars and what have you, and on movie making, because in the second half they're actually part of a film crew. But yeah, and then Kurt Russell comes along and turns their lives upside down and puts them into crisis mode. But yeah, all these characters are really, really awesome. They're all really cool women, and they're played by really terrific actresses who are also, all of them, pretty gorgeous. You've got Tamiia Poitier, who is a DJ, and Jordan Ladd, who is her friend, and then you've got an out-of-town friend who's played by Vanessa Ferlito. I kept forgetting her name. She plays Butterfly, and she's sort of the subject of a prank that the DJ character has played on her, whereby guys are supposed to come up to her throughout the day and recite a poem, and then she'll supposedly give them a lap dance for that. So she's not real happy when they break the news to her about that, because they, you know, the DJ girl, she announced it all over the radio that morning. So the three of them basically are hanging out with a couple of guys in first one bar and then the other. So the focus of the story really is on them, you know, and Mike is just sort of this thing that comes along and turns their lives upside down. And then in the second half, you've got Rosario Dawson, who is, I think, an assistant director on this movie that they're all working on, and Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who is an actress, and Tracie Thoms, who is a driver, a professional driver for the production. And they're all hanging out in Lebanon, Tennessee, and they happen to come across Kurt Russell, who fixates on them and then follows them around. They're picking up Zoe Bell from the airport, who's just come from New Zealand. Now, Zoe Bell is an actual stunt woman. She's playing herself in this movie. She was Uma Thurman's stunt double in Kill Bill, and she got along with Tarantino so well that that he cast her basically as herself in this movie. So they pick her up from the airport, and they're hanging out, and she tells them about how she found out about this guy who's selling a 1970s Dodge Challenger painted white, just like the car in Vanishing Point, and she wants to take it out for a test drive. So it's the four of them basically hanging out, again, talking about, work, talking about the men in their lives, talking about, how long they've been friends and what have you. And then, there's this whole scenario where they've got to borrow the car or test drive the car without the owner actually there, so they can sort of, put the, pedal to the metal without him, giving them hell for it. So really that's the focus of the movie. It's the interplay between these women characters, rather than, some man might comes along and just like starts threatening them, and so they react to him. But he's not really the focus of the movie. It's really all about them. There is a scene that takes place in the second half where Rosario Dawson and the other three, they're all hanging out at a cafe having lunch. And they're having a conversation. This reminded me of Reservoir Dogs because the camera's circling around them. But eventually I realized that the camera's actually circling around them without any cuts. It's a 7-minute scene that is done without any cuts whatsoever. Very, very impressive. Goes around one way, then the other, focuses on one and the other. It's an incredible shot. Really, really great shot. And then, of course, once they borrow the car and take it on the road, Kurt Russell comes up in his black Dodge Charger and starts, bumping into them and really scaring them. But then they fight back against him. He picked the wrong group of gals, because Tracie Thoms, she's an experienced driver. She knows how to, run him off the road if she wants to. And so, they have fun getting back at him after that. Now, if there are any flaws in this movie, and there are a couple, it would be the climactic chase goes on a little bit too long. I think this is probably because Tarantino didn't have time to cut it down because he was down to the wire with the release. And also the central problem with having two groups of women rather than one particular character carries over from one half to the other is that there isn't that sort of emotional payoff when they strike back against Kurt Russell in the end. He's just some guy who started harassing them, and so they run him down. Whereas in the first half of Death Proof, Kurt Russell takes the time to sit in the bar and chat with someone and get to know him a little bit, and he tells them his name is Stuntman Mike, and they know a little bit about him, so he sort of, that's part of the thrill for him. Whereas these women, he doesn't know anything about them, and they don't know anything about him, so there isn't the kind of payoff. He's just some anonymous a dude that started, with a car that started, giving them trouble, and so they gave him trouble back again. But I kind of like the way how you have, the two halves sort of mirror the two halves of Grindhouse as a whole. And with the two halves of Death Proof, it's sort of like Death Proof and its sequel, rather than two halves of the same movie. Some people probably didn't like that, but, I thought it was an interesting experiment. Maybe not totally successful, but, sure has some really great scenes in it, a lot of good music, and the women in this movie are just fantastic. However, I will say that I do like Planet Terror better. I think it's a better film overall and embraces sort of the lunacy of the whole experiment, the Grindhouse experiment, a lot more fully than Death Proof. They have a lot more fun with the missing scene segment in Death Proof because both movies have a scene that was removed. But if you're watching them on your own, then Death Proof is probably an improvement over the Grindhouse version because it has a little bit of extra footage that fleshes out things just a little bit better. But overall, still, I mean, it's nothing that kills the movie by being lost. If I'd say that if you want to watch this, watch the whole Grindhouse rather than just one half or the other, or both, because it's the whole experience, really, that is meant to be seen that way. Anyway, that's my take on it. I'm sure you have some thoughts about Death Proof yourself. Why don't you just take a picture, or better yet, do a video and attach it to mine, and I'll add you to the Tarantino playlist that I'm building, so all our Tarantino videos can be in the same spot. My next video, of course, will be on Christmas Eve, and it will be on the multiple Academy Award nominee and box office sensation Inglourious Basterds. And after that, Django Unchained. So, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you later.